Commander Lee Hannah pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation window. Below her, Terra Nova Station stretched out like a small city floating in space. The artificial sunrise painted everything in warm golden light, making the massive agricultural domes look like giant bubbles filled with green life. Another beautiful morning, she whispered to herself, watching farmers tend to crops that would feed 50,000 people. This was humanity's greatest achievement, a thriving colony far from Earth. Proof that humans could build homes among the stars. Her daughter, Kim Ji-woo, was somewhere in the education sector right now, probably bent over her biology textbooks. The girl had big dreams of studying alien life forms, just like her mother had before taking command of the station. Hannah smiled, remembering her own younger days when she thought the universe was full of friendly neighbors waiting to share their knowledge. The door chimed behind her. "Commander, the morning reports are ready," said Lieutenant Choi Byung, her faithful aide. His uniform was crisp, and his voice steady, like always. Byung had been with her for 3 years, helping run the daily operations that kept us floating. "City alive. What's our status?" Hannah asked, turning away from the window. "All sectors showing green, ma'am. No problems anywhere. The terraform processors are working faster than expected. Dr. Park says the atmosphere will be breathable in less than 5 years, instead of the planned 7. Hannah nodded with satisfaction. Everything was going perfectly. The Terran Federation back on Earth would be proud of their progress. Terra Nova wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, in the research sector. Dr. Park Minho was finishing his morning tea while reviewing notes from yesterday's meeting. The Altarians had been fascinating guests, their blue skin and 4 arms, making them look like something from a children's storybook. But they were real, and they were peaceful. They had shared technology for growing food in zero gravity, and asked for nothing in return except friendship. "Remarkable creatures," Park muttered, writing down their gift of new seed varieties. "Truly remarkable." The Altarians represented everything good about first contact. When humans first met alien species, everyone had feared war and destruction. Instead, they found trading partners, teachers, and friends. The galaxy seemed full of civilizations eager to share knowledge and resources. Lieutenant Choi walked through the residential areas on his daily inspection. Children ran through the corridors, laughing as they played games. Their parents worked at various jobs: teachers, engineers, doctors, farmers. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone belonged. He stopped at the school section and peered through a classroom window. Kim Gi-woo sat in the front row, raising her hand eagerly to answer a question about plant biology. She was smart, like her mother, always asking questions about how things worked. The future belongs to kids like her, Byung thought. Kids who will grow up knowing aliens are friends, not enemies. Meanwhile, far beyond the edge of the solar system, something watched from the darkness. The Kethran observation ship had been hidden behind the outer moon for weeks, its sensors recording everything that happened on Terra Nova Station. Admiral Vextar studied the data with his compound eyes, his insect-like features showing no emotion. The ship's bridge was dark and cold, filled with the clicking sounds of his crew communicating in their native language. "Report," he commanded, in a voice like grinding metal. "The humans continue to expand, Admiral. Their terraforming equipment grows stronger each day. Soon they will claim this entire system." Vextar's mandibles clicked together in anger. His people, the Kethron hegemony, had marked this territory as theirs over 2,000 years ago. The fact that no Kethran had actually lived here didn't matter. It was the principle of the thing. Humans had no right to be here. "Have our requests been approved?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral. The High Command has authorized preemptive cleansing. We may proceed when ready." Vextar looked at the peaceful station through his view screen. 50,000 humans lived there, building their little civilization, thinking they were safe. They had no weapons, no military ships, no defenses worth mentioning the Terran Federation believed in peaceful exploration, not warfare. How naive, he thought. They think the universe cares about their good intentions. Back on Tekha Nova, Commander Hannah was having lunch with her daughter in the station's main cafeteria. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Families shared meals while discussing their daily work. Scientists debated theories. Engineers planned new improvements to the station. "Mom, do you think we'll meet more aliens soon?" Jiwoo asked between bites of synthesized protein. "I hope so, sweetheart. The more friends we make, the better. I want to study them all. Maybe I can help them solve problems on their worlds, like they've helped us." Hannah reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's a wonderful dream. Never stop believing in it." Neither of them knew that their peaceful world had only hours left to exist. Neither of them suspected that somewhere in the darkness, enemies were preparing to turn their sanctuary into a graveyard. The station hummed with life and hope, completely unaware that humanity's age of innocent exploration was about to end forever. Engineer Songdae was drinking his morning coffee when every screen in the communication center went dark at once. The cheerful beeping sounds of incoming messages from Earth suddenly stopped, replaced by an awful silence that made his stomach twist with worry. "What's happening?" he muttered, frantically pushing buttons and checking connections. All the communication arrays that kept Terra Nova connected to the rest of humanity had simply died. No signals going out, nothing coming in. It was like someone had cut every wire at the same time. Strange energy readings danced across his instruments. Radiation patterns he had never seen before. The exotic particles were jamming every frequency they used to talk to Earth, Mars, and the other human colonies. Someone was doing this on purpose. In the command center, Tactical Officer Namtae stared at his console in disbelief. 30 massive objects had just appeared on his sensors, dropping out of hyperspace like monsters emerging from a nightmare. Each ship was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that his computer couldn't even identify. "Commander," he shouted across the busy control room. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, massive energy signatures. Commander Lee Hannah rushed to his station, her breakfast forgotten. The tactical display showed Terra Nova Station, surrounded by alien warships, in a perfect attack formation. Her blood turned cold as she realized what was about to happen. "Are those ships responding to our signals?" she asked, hoping desperately that this was some kind of misunderstanding. "No response, ma'am. They're charging weapons." The first plasma beams struck the agricultural domes with devastating force. The massive structures that had taken years to build vanished in seconds, turned into clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. 50,000 tons of growing crops disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. Hannah watched in horror as the peaceful home she had built was torn apart before her eyes. The Kethron fleet fired with cold precision, targeting the areas with the most civilian population first. These weren't military strikes. This was murder. "All hands, emergency evacuation." She broadcast on the internal communication system, her voice steady despite the terror in her heart. "This is not a drill. Move to evacuation pods immediately." The station shook as more plasma bolts struck the residential sectors. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the corridors as families grabbed whatever they could carry and ran toward the escape shuttles. Parents scooped up crying children, while elderly colonists moved as fast as their legs could carry them. Through the observation windows, Hannah could see the enemy ships moving closer. They looked like giant metal insects with sharp, angular holes, covered in weapon ports. Smaller ships launched from their bellies, troop transports heading straight for Terra Nova's docking bays. Kethran shock troops cut through the station's outer hull like it was made of paper. Their molecular disruptors sliced through metal and plastic, creating entry points wherever they wanted them. The aliens moved with terrible efficiency, following a plan they had obviously practiced many times before. In the education sector, teachers tried to keep their students calm as the building shook around them. Kim Ji-woo helped her younger classmates line up by the emergency exits, her hands trembling but her voice steady as she repeated the evacuation procedures they had drilled so many times. Then the plasma beam hit. The entire education complex vanished in a ball of white-hot fire. Hundreds of children, dozens of teachers, all the hopes and dreams of Terra Nova's future, gone in less than a second. The explosion was so bright that people in the command center could see it through the station's walls. Dr. Park Min-ho ran through the research labs, grabbing the most important data files and shoving them into emergency storage containers. 20 years of scientific discoveries, peaceful contact protocols, and cultural exchange records had to be saved somehow. If anyone survived this attack, they needed to know what humanity had learned about making friends with aliens. "This doesn't make sense," he gasped as he worked. "The Altarians were peaceful. All our contacts have been peaceful. Why would anyone do this?" Commander Hannah faced an impossible choice. The station's experimental quantum beacon could send a faster-than-light message to Earth, warning them about the attack, but using it would drain all their remaining power, leaving the evacuation shuttles defenseless against enemy fighters. Engineer Songdae looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Commander, if we don't tell Earth what's happening here, they won't know to prepare for war. These aliens might attack every human colony." Hannah thought about her daughter, probably dead in the ruins of the education sector. She thought about the 3,000 colonists who might still escape if the shuttles had power for their weapons and shields. Then she thought about Earth, Mars, and all the other human worlds, completely unprepared for this kind of brutal attack. "Do it," she ordered, her voice breaking. "Send the message." The quantum beacon activated, consuming the station's power reserves in one massive burst of energy. Somewhere in space, emergency shuttles went dark as their defensive systems failed, but racing toward Earth at impossible speed was a signal carrying news that would change humanity forever. As Terra Nova Station broke apart around her, Hannah recorded one final message while escape pods fled into the void. Of 50,000 peaceful colonists, barely 3,000 would live to tell the story of humanity's first military defeat. The universe had just taught humanity a terrible lesson about the price of being defenseless. President Kong Soo-jin stood before the largest audience in human history. Every television, computer screen, and communication device on Earth, Mars, and the asteroid colonies showed her face. Billions of people had stopped whatever they were doing to listen to what she had to say about Terra Nova. Her hands shook slightly as she gripped the podium. Behind her, the flag of the Terran Federation hung at half-staff, its bright colors seeming dull in the harsh studio lights. She had been president for only 2 years, elected on promises of peaceful expansion and scientific discovery. Now she had to tell her species that everything had changed. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of human space. "Today, we learned that the universe is not the peaceful place we hoped it to be. Today, we mourn Terra Nova and the 50,000 souls who called it home. Tomorrow, we ensure this never happens again." The words hit like hammer blows. In living rooms across Earth, families held each other and cried. On Mars, miners stopped their work and stared at screens in disbelief. In the asteroid belt, engineers and scientists who had spent their lives building peaceful colonies suddenly understood that everything they had worked for was now at risk. The Global Defense Council had been a small organization before Terra Nova. Their job was mainly to stop pirates and settle minor disputes between colonies. They had 15 ships, mostly converted exploration vessels with light weapons. Their headquarters was a modest building in Geneva that most people walked past without noticing. All of that changed in a single day. Admiral Wang Donghayan had been enjoying his retirement on Jeju Island when the emergency call came. At 72 years old, he thought his fighting days were over. He had served in the corporate wars of the 2180s, when mining companies fought each other for asteroid rights. Those conflicts seemed like children's games compared to what humanity now faced. The war cabinet met in an underground bunker that had been built during Earth's last World War, centuries ago. The room smelled of dust and old metal, but it was the most secure place on the planet. Around the table sat the leaders of every major human colony and corporation. Huang looked at each face in turn. These were people who had spent their lives building and creating, not destroying. Now they would have to learn a different way of thinking. 50,000 dead, he said quietly, letting the number sink in. Including children, including families who believed in humanity's peaceful future. He paused, feeling the weight of every lost life. They wanted to see what happens when you corner a human. Let's show them. Within hours, emergency laws passed through every human government. The Peaceful Expansion Act was suspended. The non-militarization treaty was declared void. Resources that had been meant for schools, hospitals, and research stations were redirected to weapons production. On Luna, the massive shipyards that had built generation ships and exploration vessels retooled their assembly lines. Instead of ships designed to carry families to new worlds, they began building dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. The workers who had once installed hydroponic gardens and children's playgrounds now mounted particle cannons and missile launchers. Mars became a weapons factory almost overnight. The terraforming equipment that had slowly been turning the red planet into a garden world was redesigned for war. Atmospheric processors that could change the air of entire planets became mining lasers powerful enough to crack asteroids were mounted on warships as primary weapons. Dr. Yoon Juye had survived Terra Nova by being in the agricultural research lab when the attack began. She had watched through reinforced windows as the education sector, where Commander Lee's daughter studied, was vaporized. The explosion had been so bright it burned spots in her vision that lasted for days. Now, she stood in a weapons development lab, working with technology that would have horrified her peaceful younger self. In her hands was a prototype gravity bomb that could tear apart the molecular bonds holding a planet together. They destroyed our gardens, she said to her assistant, calibrating the weapons targeting system. We'll give them desserts. Other Terra Nova survivors found themselves in similar positions throughout the growing war machine. Engineer Song Dae designed new communication systems that couldn't be jammed. Dr. Park Minho used his knowledge of alien biology to create weapons, specifically designed to hurt the species that had killed his friends. The industrial might of humanity, spread across dozens of worlds and thousands of space stations, focused on a single goal: building the largest military fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Every human colony contributed something. Earth provided raw materials and manpower. Mars supplied advanced technology. The asteroid belt offered rare metals and manufacturing facilities. The centerpiece of this new fleet was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed every other ship humanity had ever built. It was armed with weapons that violated every treaty humans had signed with peaceful alien species. Its hull was thick enough to survive direct hits from planet crackers. Its engines could push it faster than any ship in known space. They named it Hannah's Vengeance. Admiral Wang stood on its bridge 6 months after Terra Nova's destruction, looking out at the assembled fleet. Hundreds of warships stretched as far as the eye could see. Each one was crewed by humans who had lost friends, family, or dreams to the Kethran attack. We were explorers, he told his fleet commanders over the communication system. We were dreamers. They made us something else. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The peaceful age of human expansion was over. The age of human warfare had begun. The Terran expeditionary fleet appeared in Kethran's space like a nightmare made of metal and fire. One moment, the alien home systems were peaceful and quiet. The next moment, Hundreds of human warships filled the darkness, their weapons already charging for battle. Admiral Wong stood on the bridge of Hannah's Vengeance, watching the enemy fleet scramble to respond. The Kethron ships moved in perfect formations, just like their military manuals taught them. Neat lines of battle cruisers, support vessels in the rear, fighters arranged in precise attack patterns. Predictable, Wang muttered, then opened his communication channel. All ships, ignore their battle line. Target their supply convoys first. Make them chase us. What followed wasn't traditional warfare. It was something the Kethrons had never seen before and didn't know how to fight against. Human ships broke every rule of military engagement that civilized species followed. They attacked weak points instead of meeting strength with strength. They retreated when winning and attacked when losing. They targeted civilian infrastructure and supply lines instead of military bases. General Clark H.K., commanding the Kethron 3rd Battle Group, watched in growing horror as human ships ignored his heavily armed dreadnoughts and instead attacked the fuel tankers and ammunition ships, hiding behind them. Without supplies, his powerful fleet became floating junk. They fight without honor, he hissed to his subordinates, his insect-like features twisted with disgust. What kind of military ignores a direct challenge and attacks supply lines instead? His aide clicked nervously. General, perhaps we should adapt our tactics to match theirs. Never. Clark slammed his claw against the command console. The hegemony has fought with honor for 10,000 years. We will not become barbarians like these humans. That decision cost him his entire fleet within 6 hours. Captain Kim Ji-woo had changed completely since Terra Nova. The young woman who once dreamed of studying alien plants now led assault teams through the corridors of enemy ships. Her mother's death had burned away everything soft and hopeful inside her, leaving only cold determination and perfect hatred. She crouched behind cover on Vorth Prime's moon, looking at the massive Kethron command center through her scope. Intelligence said this facility controlled military operations for 3 entire star systems. Destroying it would blind the enemy fleet for weeks. Remember, she told her team over the communication system, these are the same species that killed our families. Show them exactly as much mercy as they showed Terra Nova. The assault was swift and brutal. Human soldiers moved through the alien base like a plague, killing everything that moved. They had learned Kethron anatomy from captured prisoners and knew exactly where to shoot to cause maximum pain before death. Kim Ji-woo personally executed the base commander, looking into his compound eyes as she pulled the trigger. That was for my mother, she whispered. Engineer Song-dae had once fixed communication equipment and worried about power consumption. Now he operated weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Standing at the weapons console aboard the destroyer, Terra's Wrath, he targeted another Kethron military installation on the surface below. The gravity cascade weapon charged with a deep humming sound that he felt in his bones. This particular weapon used the planet's own mass against itself, creating gravitational waves that would tear apart anything within a 50-kilometer radius. Target locked, reported his gunner. Song-dae thought about the Terra Nova education sector and all the children who had died there. His finger hovered over the firing button. This one's for the children, he whispered, and pressed down. The weapon fired, sending invisible waves of distorted gravity toward the planet's surface. The Kethron base simply ceased to exist, along with the surrounding landscape, where there had once been buildings and landing pads. Now there was only a perfectly round crater filled with molten rock. Dr. Yoon Juye had become something that would have horrified her peaceful younger self. The woman who had once grown food to feed families now created biological weapons to kill entire worlds. Her laboratory aboard the science vessel Garden's End produced atmospheric agents, designed specifically to target Kethron biology. Release pattern 7 on the 4th planet, she ordered her team. Complete atmospheric saturation in 12 hours. The biological agent spread through the alien world's air like invisible death. It was designed to attack the breathing organs that Kethrans used to process their planet's natural gases. Within days, every Kethran on the surface would suffocate slowly and painfully. They wanted to see what humans do when pushed too far, she said, watching the planet die from orbit. Now they know. The Kethran Empire had ruled dozens of star systems for thousands of years. Their military had conquered hundreds of smaller species. They thought they understood warfare and what it meant to fight for territory and resources. They were completely wrong about humans. Humans didn't fight for land, or wealth, or strategic advantage. They fought for memory. They fought for the dead children of Terra Nova. They fought for the dream of peaceful exploration that had been murdered along with 50,000 colonists. They fought with the fury of a species that had tried to be good and been punished for it, as world after world fell to human weapons. The surviving Kethran leadership finally understood what they had awakened. In their secure bunkers, they received reports of entire fleets destroyed, planets rendered uninhabitable, and military bases simply erased from existence. "We cannot negotiate with them," reported Admiral Vextar, the same leader who had ordered Terra Nova's destruction. "They ignore all attempts at communication. They offer no terms for surrender. They simply ... kill everything." The hegemony had created something they couldn't control, couldn't reason with, and couldn't stop. Humanity had become exactly what the universe had taught them to become, a weapon pointed at anyone who threatened the innocent. 18 months after the destruction of Terra Nova, the war was over. The Kethran hegemony, which had ruled dozens of star systems for thousands of years, surrendered completely to humanity. Their mighty empire now consisted of just 3 worlds under Terran military control. President Kong Sujin stood before the Global Assembly on Earth, looking out at representatives from every human colony in space. These were the same people who had once voted for peaceful exploration and scientific advancement. Now they all wore the hard expressions of those who had learned terrible truths about the universe. "We have one," she announced, her voice echoing through the Great Hall. "The Kethran Empire is defeated. Our colonies are safe. Our enemies will never threaten us again." She paused, feeling the weight of what humanity had become. "The question now is, what have we become?" The silence that followed her words was heavy with understanding. Everyone in that room knew the answer, even if they didn't want to speak it out loud. Colonel Kim Gi-woo floated through the asteroid field where Terra Nova Station had once been. Her military shuttle moved slowly between chunks of twisted metal and frozen debris, all that remained of humanity's first great colony. In the center of the field, construction crews had built a memorial from salvaged pieces of the station's hull. She docked her shuttle and walked through the memorial's quiet halls. Holographic displays showed images of life before the attack: children playing in the corridors, families eating together in the cafeterias, scientists working in the laboratories. All of it seemed like it had happened in a different universe, to a different species. At the center of the memorial, her mother's final message played on an endless loop. Commander Lee Hanna's face appeared on the screen, speaking the words she had recorded as Terra Nova died around her. "Tell them we were human," her mother said, tears streaming down her face. "Tell them we loved peace. Tell them we built gardens among the stars and welcomed strangers as friends. Tell them that when they took our children, they chose war." Kim Ji-woo had watched this message hundreds of times, but it still made her chest tight with pain and rage. Below the screen, carved into a piece of the station's original hull, were words written in dozens of languages from across human space. "They struck our heart, so we showed them our soul." She touched the cold metal with her gloved hand, remembering the girl she had been before the attack. That girl had dreamed of studying alien life forms and making peaceful contact with new species. That girl was dead, killed, along with everyone else on Terra Nova. Admiral Wang Dongqian sat in his office on Keth Prime, the former capital world of the hegemony. Through his window, he could see Kethron civilians going about their daily lives under human military rule. They learned human farming techniques to grow food that could feed both species. They studied human engineering to rebuild their damaged cities. They received human medicine to treat diseases their own doctors couldn't cure. "Daily report, sir," said his aide, placing a datapad on his desk. Huang read through the statistics without emotion. Production numbers, population counts, security incidents. The Kethrons were adapting to human rule better than expected. Some human officials called this mercy, allowing the defeated enemy to survive and rebuild under human guidance. Others called it something darker. The slow death of everything the Kethron hegemony had once been. Their culture, their independence, their identity, all of it was being replaced by human systems and human values. In a generation or two, there would be nothing left of the species. That had destroyed Terra Nova, except the shape of their bodies. Dr. Yoon Jie stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the construction of humanity's newest defense platform. The massive structure bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Similar platforms now orbited every human world, turning peaceful colonies into fortress systems. "Is this what we wanted?" asked her assistant, a young engineer who had been born after Terra Nova. Yoon Jie thought about the question seriously. Once, she had grown food in the agricultural domes of a peaceful research station. Now she designed weapons of mass destruction and supervised the militarization of human space. The transformation still surprised her sometimes. "We wanted to explore the stars and make friends with aliens," she said finally. "The universe taught us that wasn't possible, so we adapted." Below them, children attended schools where they learned mathematics, literature, history, and advanced weapons training. Every human child now grew up knowing how to fight, how to kill, and how to protect what they loved from those who would take it away. Explorer ships still traveled to distant stars, but now they carried enough firepower to sterilize planets. Scientists still studied alien life forms, but now they looked for weaknesses that could be exploited in future wars. Diplomats still made contact with new species, but now they spoke from positions of overwhelming strength. The species that had once reached for the stars with open hands now held them with iron fists. Terra Nova's ruins floated in space as an eternal reminder of what happened to the innocent and unprepared. Never again would humanity be caught defenseless. Never again would they trust in the goodness of strangers. The peaceful explorers were gone, replaced by guardians who had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, to protect what you love, you must become what you hate. Humanity had won more than just a war. They had won the terrible knowledge that they were capable of anything, when pushed far enough. The universe had wanted to see what humans became when cornered. Now it knew.